Hey, this is Mike from the Run Testers. This is the Saucony Endorphin Elite 2 and this is the Saucony Endorphin Pro 4. Now, if you are looking for Saucony's top carbon shoe racers, these two sit top of that list. Now, if you are sold on a Saucony racer, you're not sure which one of these you should go for. Fortunately, we have tested both now. What we're going to do in this video is myself, Nick and Kieran are going to take you through our running experiences and let you know whether you should go for the Saucony Endorphin Elite 2 or the Saucony Endorphin Pro 4. So here's your lowdown on the Saucony Endorphin Elite 2 and the Endorphin Pro 4. Let's start with price, and the Elite 2 is the more expensive of the two shoes, with the Pro 4 coming in £50 cheaper in the UK. Both feature 8mm drops with the same stack heights, and the Elite 2 weighing in slightly lighter than the Pro 4. The uppers are predominantly knit, with the Elite 2 adding mesh at the forefoot of the shoe, but you're also getting similar tongues and lacing, while padding at the heel is more minimal on the Elite 2. The midsole makeups use different cushioning technologies and carbon plate designs, with both using Saucony speed roll geometry to create that more rockered ride. The outsole designs differ too, with rubber focused at the forefoot on both to make sure you've got enough grip to play with for your faster training days and race days.
So I have different sizes of the two shoes here, and that's largely down to a mistake I made when going for a slightly smaller size in the Endorphin Elite 2. So with the Endorphin Pro 4, I have my normal UK size 9, which is a US size 10. Fits me very well. I have no concerns about the fit at all. With some Saucony shoes like the Speed and the Endorphin Trainer, I can go half a size down in the UK to get, a fit that I like a bit more sometimes, a little bit more dialed in. I actually potentially could have done that with the Pro 4, but you definitely can't do that with the Saucony Endorphin Elite 2. I think it is quite a small fitting shoe, so going half size down means that I've not got enough room in my toe box. I think even if you were sticking to your normal size in the shoe, it might be quite cramped around the toes because it has a fairly narrow design and tapers quite sharply at the front there, so that would be something to look out for, I think. So I would stick to your normal size with both shoes. With the Pro 4, no real concerns about the fit. The Elite V2 I think is quite a narrow shoe and can be a bit tight even if you're going for the right size, unlike myself.
When it comes to fit, I ran in a US 9.5, UK 8.5 in both shoes, which is my regular Saucony size. In the Elite 2, you get enough length in the toe box, you get good clearance across the top of the big toes as well. The toe box also has some structure to it, I think, that keeps the uppers away from your toes. So no black toenail woes, which is a really positive even over longer distances. That's something you definitely want in a race shoe. The integrated tongues, I think, wrap and hold for good comfort and excellent lockdown across the top of the foot. However, I did find that they came up somewhat narrow, somewhat tight, narrow and kind of squashed around the little toe on that outside edge. It was only a worry on my longer runs, but it does feel a little bit cramped, and I'd recommend looking closely at the size if you've got wide feet or you're a fan of more room for your toes to splay. The Endorphin Pro 4 doesn't fit as close as the Elite 2's booty style fit, but the overall fit I think as well is really good. One note, I found the lacing a bit odd. I had to use the top eyelet to get reliable lockdown and prevent heel slipping. I also struggled sometimes to get the integrated tongues to sit right, particularly at the bottom end of the laces, where I felt like I wanted to tug them up and pull them a little bit back further up my foot. Tugging on the tongues didn't always get the position correct. Actually, I get a bit of that in both shoes, but when it comes to roominess, I found the Pro 4 hugging but not cramped, with nice flex in the toe box, a decent balance of comfort and security. So overall, I'd recommend going true to size in both shoes, but keep an eye on the Elite 2 if you want a bit more space.
So in terms of fit, I've got both of these shoes in a UK size 8. That's my typical running shoe size. And generally going true to size in Saucony shoes has worked well for me. I haven't really had to think about going, sizing up or sizing down in these shoes. What I would say is both are very kind of light kind of uppers, kind of supporting in the right areas without offering too much extra material. So, very much a racing style fit. What I would say is that the Pro 4 maybe is just a touch more accommodating, just opens up a little bit more in that kind of toe box, a little bit more in that midfoot area as well. So that, I think if you wanted that kind of roomier feel, I think the Endorphin Pro 4 is going to give you that. I think with the Elite 2, the only thing I would kind of pick out is that I've been very happy with the space up front in the toe box, but there's a little bit of difference in the makeup of the uppers. There's a bit more of kind of harder kind of mesh here, which I have found has dug into my little toes. You don't get that on the Pro 4, and I haven't had any of those kind of issues on the Pro 4. So it might be very personal to me, but that's definitely something I think worth highlighting in these two shoes. Lacing and tongues very similar. You've got those kind of flip over, kind of call them football boot kind of tongues here that kind of flip down, and the kind of lockdown's been generally very good for me. The heel collars are different. You're getting more traditional kind of heel collar look on the Endorphin Pro 4, so if that's something you prefer, actually going to get there. The Endorphin Elite 2, it's kind of more minimal, more kind of focused on the back here and, less here. But, I found it's been, relatively fine, kind of locked in, kind of been comfortable and kind of very kind of stable there and supportive at the back there. So, yeah, I think the key things for me, definitely going true size for me has worked. This shoe, the Endorphin Pro 4, is a touch more accommodating than the Elite 2. And I've also had none of those issues on the Pro 4 that I've had on the Elite 2 around these kind of areas of this kind of mesh that kind of sits around the toes.
So the Saucony Endorphin Elite 1 and the Endorphin Pro 3 were pretty different shoes, but they still had quite a few similar characteristics that marked them out almost as Saucony carbon shoes, and they were both slightly firmer than average and fairly stable for carbon plate super shoes. With the latest generations, that's still true of the Endorphin Pro 4, but the Endorphin Elite 2 is something very different. It's a very different shoe to both its predecessor and the Endorphin Pro 4. Much softer foam in the midsole here now, a bouncier feeling shoe, like more exciting and wild shoe, but certainly not a stable one, and something that is a bit different to the Saucony Endorphin racing shoes we've seen in the past. So Endorphin Pro 4 is a shoe we tested first, and like I say, it is quite similar to lots of the previous Saucony Endorphin Pro shoes we've tried. You've got a nice, bouncy, responsive foam here. It's not the softest in the world, but it is cushioned enough to be comfortable on long runs, I've found. You've got that very present and noticeable speed roll rocker, which is almost the key characteristic of the shoe. Really rolls you through your foot strike very naturally, and it feels very good at fast paces. Also at slow paces. The Endorphin Pro 4 is a shoe that you can use for quite a wide range of training runs, I'd say. It almost fulfills the role of a super trainer as well as being a racing shoe, and it is a really fast shoe. I did some of my hardest training sessions for the London Marathon last year in this shoe, and it always really impressed me. I've also raced a 10k in it. Don't think it quite has the propulsive edge of the very best carbon shoes, but it does offer some slightly different benefits in being a bit more stable and natural and comfortable at slower paces than lots of super shoes out there. It's quite an approachable super shoe all round, and one that will work quite well for newer runners who are looking maybe at their first carbon shoe. Endorphin Elite 2 is very different. Like I say, it's really soft, it's wobbly underfoot, it's not the most stable shoe for sure. You've got some lateral stability issues, it doesn't even grip that well, but it does have an incredibly fast ride and a really fun one as well. Like when I was running on the track in the shoe, or doing fast runs on a nice controlled course where I'm not doing too many sharp turns, that kind of thing, it feels fantastic. It's really unlike almost any other carbon shoe now, because it is so soft at the heel or anywhere where you land on it, and then still rolls you through quite nicely. You still have got the speed roll rocker on the shoe, but it's certainly not the thing that defines the ride feel. Whereas with most of the Endorphins, that smooth rocker was the thing that really I noticed the most on the run. But with the Endorphin Elite 2, it's very much that soft foam and the really springy ride you get from it. It's also lighter than the Pro 4. In general, just a much more explosive, fast shoe for sure. So it's definitely the one that is the faster racing option of these two shoes at any distance. It's also a little bit more comfortable, I think, because it is so soft. With the Endorphin Pro 4 over on longer hard runs, I get a little bit of forefoot discomfort because of the way I snap through as a heel striker. You're not getting that with the Endorphin Elite 2 because it is so much softer underfoot. Did do a short run wearing both shoes at the same time, and yeah, it's night and day on the different feet, I would say. It's just so much softer and bouncier, this shoe. Like, it makes the Endorphin Pro 4 feel very normal when it is, a pretty impressive carbon shoe in its own right, but Endorphin Elite just feels so much more, super as a super shoe, it's fair to say. But there's certainly are drawbacks to the shoe that you get from this really bouncy and soft midsole, the main one being stability.
So in terms of my running time in these two shoes, I've done well over 50k in both. I've not raced in the Elite 2. I have raced in the Endorphin Pro 4 at 10k distance. I've also used this for my longer kind of marathon pace kind of training runs when I was training for London, but I have used the Elite 2 at my kind of 5k, 10k, half marathon pace, used it for track sessions as well. So I've got a good sense of how these two shoes run kind of shorter, but also kind of cruising at longer kind of half marathon pace as well. Now, if I was holding the Elite here and the Endorphin Pro 4, there'd be a very clear difference between how these two shoes feel to run fast in. Now, what you're getting is two soft feeling kind of midsoles. That's what I would say, definitely compared to other kind of super shoes. But if you compare them in terms of that softness, the Endorphin Elite 2 takes things up another notch. It's so much softer underfoot compared to the Endorphin Pro 4. I think the balance is just about right on the Endorphin Pro 4 in the sense that when I run longer in that shoe and I've cruised in that shoe, it's felt comfortable without feeling too unstable. And I think for me, it's probably one of the more stable kind of carbon shoes that you can buy. And what I found when I've run kind of further in Endorphin Pro 4, and you've got that kind of speed roll rocker in both of these shoes that work really nicely. It's probably one of the best kind of rocker designs that you'll get on a carbon racing shoe. I just felt I could cruise a lot nicer, a lot more comfortable in the Endorphin Pro 4. Still get that faster feeling, but still feel like my feet are rolling, heel to toe very quickly, but also in a very kind of comfortable fashion, not really realizing I'm running a little bit quicker than I actually am. I think with the Endorphin Elite 2, I think particularly over shorter distances compared to the Pro 4, it is definitely, while softer, bouncier, the rebound is a lot higher. It's just a little bit more aggressive and a bit more in keeping with the Elite in that sense. Now, when I've run longer in it, when I've kind of run kind of more awkward, kind of, twisty, turny kind of routes, that softer feeling definitely has created more unstable feeling, more unstable than the Endorphin Pro 4. I think it just feels like, I feel more comfortable and more safe in the knowledge that I'm running faster than Endorphin Pro 4 and I'm doing it in a very controlled manner. I think with the Elite 2, yes, it feels lively and fast and, very kind of aggressive, but I always feel like, there's some unstable elements to my running time in two shoes. I think from a durability point of view, I mean, down to the fact that, both have got, exposed areas in their outsoles, probably cover the same, areas in terms of where that rubber is. There's about a similar level of rubber in there, but I think the traction and the design on the Endorphin Pro 4 works a little bit nicer for me. I'd be more concerned about the outsole durability on both of these shoes, but more so in the Elite 2. And, I'm not seeing terrible signs of wear either just yet. But I would be a bit wary that both of these shoes are going to be ones that you're going to just really save those really important runs in your training and when you are racing. I do think these are two fast shoes. I do think that the Endorphin Elite 2 is bouncier, kind of livelier. It definitely feels more suited to shorter distances as well as being able to cruise at longer distances as well. The Endorphin Pro 4, I think, has more in its locker for kind of cruising at longer, kind of half marathon and marathon paces for me. It's still giving you that faster feel over those distances. It could work for some training as well, but I think it really comes into its own when you are running longer and you are kind of training at your kind of race pace. So both very good racers, both very different racers, based on my experience.
On the run test, I've done north and 40 miles in both of these shoes, right across the pace range, plenty of long time on feet with 90-minute marathon training runs, shorter, faster stuff, slower to find out how they handle the lower paces. Now, these shoes to me are kind of chalk and cheese. It's sort of almost the difference between a wild and a tamed horse. Both of these will carry you fast, but one of them you may well have to rope yourself onto to keep it under control. Overall, the Pro 4 is about as comfy as carbon race shoes get while remaining relatively light on the foot. It's not a million miles away from the on-foot feel, I don't think, of the Endorphin Speed for comfort. I found the midsole a bit soft and ponderous compared to some of the punchiest race shoes that perhaps have a little bit more stiffness and a bit more pop. It does provide plenty of cushion protection with a bit of bounce and some life to the midsole, but for me it doesn't have the same immediate punch and energy that you might get from an Alpha Fly or a Metaspeed or even an Adios Pro 4. Those kind of shoes just feel a little bit more lively. Having said that, nor did the Endorphin Pro 3, and if that smooth, mildly springy, but also cushion ride is what you like in a race shoe, that is what you get here, and I think it can appeal to quite a lot of runners. It feels balanced and controlled and reliable. As carbon race shoes go, I think the shoe will look after you better than most running shoes deep into longer races, at least from the perspective of cushion comfort and road protection. It handles slower paces well without feeling unstable. That's good news if things get ragged at mile 20 or 22 of your marathon. Now, on the other hand, the Saucony Endorphin Elite 2 is the opposite of all of those things I've just said. This is now probably the softest carbon racer going. That Incredi Run foam is incredibly soft. The midsole is all about high compression and high rebound, and that creates a sort of slingshot ride that's big on energy, but it's highly unique, and it also comes at the cost of stability and certainty. If you need lots of stability, this shoe probably isn't going to be the race shoe for you. There's lots of wobble in it. There's lots of care needs to be taken with each of your steps. Now, from the moment you lace them up, you're immediately wondering if you're going to be able to control them, or at least I was. When you're moving, you have to focus on your landings. This is a shoe that requires careful, considered foot placement. That is the order of the day. It's less the case when you're running up mid to forefoot, engaging the front section of that Incredi Run foam. Things are more reliable when you're moving like that. You get a highly resilient and bouncy ride with lots and lots of energy, but there's more control than when you land further back towards the heel. Now, if the Endorphin Pro 4 is a shoe you can forget you're wearing, the Elite 2 requires attention to foot placement. As I said, you need to focus on what's going on underfoot, and when you do, and when you run well, it's brilliantly fun, it's energetic, it's lively. It's got a ride that I really quite like for that element. I'd 100% pick it for a big urban marathon with straight line running like Chicago, Berlin or New York. It's much punchier than the Pro 4, but only if you can control and direct that wild midsole. I also back it much less to look after you if your form goes awry. On tired legs for the last 6 miles, struggle bussing, I'd definitely be happier in the Pro.
On to the verdict, and I would pick the Endorphin Elite 2 out of these two shoes. Like, if you're looking at these as carbon plate super shoes, very expensive shoes. The Pro 4 is significantly cheaper, but they are still expensive shoes. They're designed to help you run fast on race day and in your hardest sessions. And the Endorphin Elite 2 for me is simply a faster shoe, and I'll take all the drawbacks of it to get that speed because it's a really fun ride. It's untamed bounce with this very soft and springy midsole, and yeah, I do think I could ride at my absolute best in the shoe on race day on the right course. If there's lots of corners, I would be a bit worried about it, but you get over that because when it comes to racing, you just want a shoe that's going to do the fastest job for you, and that's this shoe. Now, that's me, and I don't think everyone will feel exactly the same way about their racing shoe. Some people will want a shoe that's going to feel a bit more natural and stable and give them a bit more support, and that is the Pro 4. It's also a cheaper shoe, and it's a shoe that I was picking up if I was looking at a carbon shoe to do loads of training runs in, as well as race day. I think this is a durable, reliable shoe for training. It feels quite natural and supportive, like I've said, and you can do a lot of training runs in it, actually, and a mix of paces, whereas the Endorphin Elite 2 is a flat-out race shoe and one to use for, the occasional very fast session, ideally without too many corners. So if you're a runner who needs their race shoe to do a lot more miles and in general be a bit more comfortable and supportive, if you're a newer runner, if you're someone who has any kind of stability issues, the Pro 4 would be the better pick for sure, whereas the Endorphin Elite is the faster shoe. It's straight up built for speed and for everything else to the wind. That's what it's designed to do, and it does it really well. That's why I like it a bit more than the Pro 4, and I'd pick it, but there are certainly reasons to look at the Pro 4 instead, I would say.
Verdict then, and I think the shoe most runners should buy out of these two is pretty straightforward. It's probably the Endorphin Pro 4. It's one of the most accessible carbon shoes that you can buy. For me, it's a snappy but safe bet. There's punch when you're moving well, but it's got your back when things aren't going according to plan. For that reason, I think it might well be one of the best marathon shoes for a large selection of runners. It's one that I think would accommodate beginner runners and suit them nicely as well. On the other hand, the Elite 2, it's untamed, it's wild, it's like a tequila shots at 3 a.m, caution to the wind kind of shoe. It's really best when you're running well with locked in form on flat, even surfaces that don't have many corners. In those conditions, it's excellent and it's a lot of fun, but I'm not sure it will cater best to most runners' needs, particularly if you need anything by the way of sort of stability. There is a bit of a disconnect in the way the ride feels between the heel and the forefoot. So all of that stacks up to this one being a bit more reliable. So which shoe would I choose? Well, if money was no object and I was chasing a marathon PB, confident I was fit enough to hit my goals with a lower risk of the wheels coming off, and I was running a course with a reliable surface, lots of straights, I'd choose the Endorphin Elite 2. If I was turning up to a race unsure of my training, knowing that this race might be on a knife edge and there might be more than a good chance of being in a tiled battle when you get deep into the race, I would choose the Endorphin Pro 4. The Pro 4 is the more versatile shoe as well. I think you can use this shoe more for faster training more readily, so it's got more training run potential as well. If I had to pick a carbon ratio, I don't think I'd actually choose either of these two first. I'd still go for the Asics Metaspeed Sky Paris or maybe even the new Brooks Hyperion Elite 4 PB. Both of those I think have more punch than the Pro 4 and more control than the Elite 2. I'd also strongly suggest checking out the Endorphin Speed 4 if you're thinking about the Pro 4. It's like a cheaper alternative to the Pro 4 that I think offers a similar ride, I think almost as much energy, but you're going to get it for less.
So my takeaway, you should go for the Saucony Endorphin Elite 2 or the Saucony Endorphin Pro 4. Now I'll start by saying these are two nice shoes to run fast in and to use for your faster days. The way I look at it is that if you are looking for a Saucony racer, that is going to be one that you can use for training for those faster sessions, but also something I think you're going to want that is comfortable and can really let you cruise at that kind of longer distance. I'd feel more comfortable doing that in Endorphin Pro 4. Now, if you're looking for a faster shoe that I think works better at shorter distances as well as those longer distances, is bouncier, livelier, and if you've got a race or a route which is very straight, flat, and you can really go hard at, then the Endorphin Elite 2 is probably going to work well for you. Now, there is a difference in the price range, and if you're looking from a value point of view, particularly from a marathon racer point of view, I'd probably be going for the Endorphin Pro 4. If you can afford the Elite 2, as I said, you would prefer something that can feel more comfortable across race distances, then I think the Elite 2 is just going to give you a little bit more on that front. Just be wary of the fact that it is going to be a little bit less stable than this shoe when running longer as well as shorter distances. So me personally, I'd probably just be veering for the Endorphin Pro 4 just based on my experience. But I can appreciate the Elite 2 is a very good shoe, just a very good shoe that's going to work for certain people, and for some people maybe isn't going to be quite the kind of perfect fit. Okay, so there you have it, our multi-tester take on how the Saucony Endorphin Elite 2 compares to the Saucony Endorphin Pro 4. Now, if you've got any questions about these shoes or any other shoes you want to see this compared to or this compared to, do let us know. As always, like and subscribe, hit that little bell to find out about latest videos, and yeah, see you for the next Run Testers video.